Hey everybody, Pastor Sam of the Gospel Gunslingers coming at you from sunny Mexico. So sunny, I'll try to get into a good position where my screen will halfway cooperate. It's been a very quiet afternoon. Maybe I'll be able to get my lesson across with a little bit more solitude. Maybe things will just go absolutely stark raving ape bonkers, which happens pretty often when the word of the Lord starts coming forth. Father, help us to have a quiet time. And kind of a controversial theme, kind of an unknown theme. You know, this is a dark corner of the Bible that a lot of preachers don't even like to get into. And I have parts of the Bible that are harder for me. But, you know, there are some taboo corners of the Bible that preachers are instructed and taught to stay away from and not to talk about. And what do you know? We find that we spend more time and do more teaching on that. And, you know, people ask me about them too. Just like we did the Dragonlancers series. Sam, this word occurs 28 times in the Bible, in the Hebrew Old Testament. 28 times. More than a lot of really relevant topics. So, what's it mean? All right, well, I broke that down. Call them like we see them. But here's a more common area of the Bible that it's all in one whole book. And what could the meaning of it be? You know, when I was a young missionary, I translated and accompanied a lot of teams. So they came from this or that strain, and all the different persuasions of Christianity had not all gone down the toilet at that point. There were still some people that had a little bit of hunger and wanted to go all the way and this or that. To use the word denominations. And so I worked with a lot of them and had interesting experiences. Well, one experience is one time we had an overnight in a little village and split up in the church, guys on one side, girls on the other, rolled out our sleeping bags and slept on the church floor with the scorpions. And then like good missionaries, everybody got up in the morning and got bumping around and separated for quiet time. Each person went their way. And I had found a wall that was, you know, probably, I don't know, maybe 4 feet high. And I was sitting on that wall with my feet extending out along the length of the wall. And I had my feet crossed and was leaning against a larger wall. And I was there and I had my Bible open. And one of these young guys, I was probably 23, they were all younger than me, you know, 18, 19, 20, which seems like a lot when you're 20. So the guy, one of these youngsters came by, and he saw I had my Bible open, and he says, "What's the word?" Well, people have to be careful inquiring about the word of the Lord. They might just get it, and I was open to this book just by the randomness. I was open Hosea, and I read him the verse. I was right there, and I had not yet discovered that there's so much infiltration against our Bible, so I had some other kind of English Bible, and the verse rendered in that version: "Go, take yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness." And I just shouted it out, and that young guy stiffened, and his eyebrows went up, and he developed an expression. He didn't really know what to do, and he just turned his head and went right back where he was going. Didn't even want to touch that. Well, you know, he didn't have to ask where I was. In the King James, let's read this out. Hosea 1:2. The beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. Said to Hosea, directs the prophet, and this is something that the prophet was commissioned to do and then actually did. We call it a mime. Hey, greenhorn, come along, come along. You know, I got a place on my subscribe star. It's a tier called Greenhorn Freeborn. We're looking for the guys that are new, but they want to be free. Come on along. This is the road. Greenhorn Freeborn. Thanks for coming. The prophet actually did this. He went down and he found him a hooker and married her. Amazing. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bear him a son. So, this is not an easy riddle. Why did the Lord do this? And we all know that Israel was backslidden at the time. It says right here, the word of the Lord that came unto Hosea the son of Beerim, the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash, king of Israel. So if you look at these kings in the end of Kings and the end of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, you see that the kingdom was about to be taken into exile and to be conquered because they turned away from the Lord. All right, so that's a partial fulfillment, but there's so much more to it than that. This beautiful prophecy tells about the gateway to enter into the glory days of the last times on the earth. It's the tale of the perfection of the bride. You know, if you follow Catholic doctrine at all, they'll tell you that the bride is supposed to be a sleazy hoe. And that's really not the case. It is, there's supposed to be a purification, and she's supposed to be without spot or wrinkle. And, you know, this is just another huge, gaping, fatal wound in the escape rapture doctrine. The whole idea that the Lord's bride is ready for her Redeemer to come. Not at all. Not at all. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, and if you've watched any of my broadcasts of late, we've been talking about the, Hosea says 2 different times, the spirit of whoredoms. It's in here 4:12. My people asked counsel at their stocks, and their staff declareth unto them. So they were into witchcraft and divination. And for the spirit of whoredoms hath caused them to err, and they've gone a whoring from unto their God. And then flipping over to chapter 5, verse 4, they will not frame their doings to turn unto their God, for the spirit of whoredoms is in the midst of them, and they have not known the Lord. So our title here is Nymphomaniacs Anonymous, and the fact is that this is a growth industry. I went and was in a little town talking to the pastor, and I said, in some places where there is a how did it go? We were speaking Spanish, of course. Where there is an epidemic of divorce. And he said, "Oh, you mean like this town?" he knew who the guilty ones were. And I said, "Yeah, well, I kind of helped start it, so I'm sorry." But yeah, there's an epidemic of divorce, and not just of divorce, of every kind of misbehavior, lasciviousness. And so I've really come out with some bordering on nasty broadcasts talking about the spirit of whoredoms and how we're up against sluttiness and tail shaking and some very, very deviant activity by females. We normally think of that the men are going to be the deviants in these areas. Nevertheless, we've been dealing with some raging hookers. And I've only really talked about a part of it because it's so deep and it's so nasty. And there is homoeroticism. And as the rapper said, men laying with men, ladies laying with ladies. Lying, of course, would be the correct English, but in Chicano-bonics, it sounds right. So shout out to Little Roddy for that, my friend Little Roddy, the evangelist rapper. I wonder if he's still out there, spinning a rhyme or two here or there. And so Nymphomaniacs Anonymous, the Lord tells through this book that the taming of some shrews that have shook tail all over the streets is the key and the gateway to entering into the blessings of the end times. So we'll see who is man enough to take up that cross and bear it. That will remain to be seen. Alcoholics Anonymous was a very powerful movement in its day, and of course that spread and sparked as an offshoot Narcotics Anonymous. And for people who would like to keep their woman at home, sometimes what really rears its head as the problem is narcotics, right? So they want to go do drugs. They want their drugs, and if they can't get their drugs, they will sidle up to, that is cozy up to, anybody that can get them their drugs. And then they'll do anything to get the drugs. Sex acts. We're talking about sex acts. And I'm going to bring forth some assertions about all that. And the Bible actually gives us some hope. But the fact is, these groups, Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, before there ever was an NA, AA was infiltrated. Jesuit priests in St. Louis, where it started, which of course is a historically Catholic, hard-drinking city on the Mississippi River. St. Louis was having a revival, and a lot of winos were leaving the streets and getting straightened up because of the original 12-step program. In the beginning, it was all Bible-based. Look to Jesus. Look to the Lord God Almighty. Admit that you're a sinner. It was the path to salvation. Just put in a language that the wino, it was packaged for the wino, so that the wino could understand the Bible, not the other way around. And then a Jesuit priest dressed up as a bum, something that also, let's just say it's happened to us before. The enemies come to us disguised. I love it where the King Jeroboam's wife is curious if his son's going to die, and so he sends his wife down to the prophet that anointed him to be king over Israel. And she disguised herself, and she came near to the prophet's door, and before she even got to the door and knocked, the prophet says, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why feignest thyself to be another?" Why are you disguised? "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why feignest thyself to be another? For I am sent unto thee with a very important errand." So the prophet was waiting for her. It's just funny how people try to catch God, and they try to pull one over on God. And it's not that we who the Lord sends into the arena are all that. It's just that the Lord himself takes the wise in their craftiness, and he can't be fooled. He can't be fooled. He'll clue us in, dumb as we are. He'll be like, "Son, look over there. That's where the drug dealers are watching you from." Okay. So the whole of AA was really subverted. It was really nipped in the bud when it was a fledgling organization. It was really just in that city. But the Jesuits heard about it, and they went in and infiltrated it, and that Jesuit priest made good friends with the founder of AA, and then brought him into Catholic doctrine, into Ignatius of Loyola and his 12 spiritual exercises, which are occult, and then really upended the whole program. So a lot of times, by the time something becomes known to everybody, and by the time it's worldwide, it's already subverted, which is why the enemy gives them their head. This is what happens with a horse. You don't put any pressure on those reins at all, they'll run wild and run fast. And when the restraint is taken off, when the enemy stops resisting a movement, boy, they'll charge ahead. Well, a lot of times the enemy allows them to charge ahead because they're no longer a danger to him. So it's kind of a joke that there's such a thing. And, here where I'm at, they're all over the city. It's a city that's overrun with alkies and winos and horrible, hard drugs. Don't ever let anybody convince you that legalization is the path forward, because that just makes it a huge population that's just stoned out of their gourd all the time, whether it's inhalants, whether it's rock. In Nezahualcóyotl, the going rate for a rock is 100 pesos, $5 for a rock. That is crack, right? And so they got to come up with that 100 pesos for that. They can get their hooch for maybe 20, 30 pesos. But for that rock, they got to come up with a $100 bill, a $5 bill. It's 100 pesos. Yeah, my friend couldn't figure out who stole his bicycle, and then it finally came out who stole it, and that it was his uncle, and that he got 200 pesos for it, and he got 2 rocks for that. He might have even got a 2 for 3 and had 1 rock for now, and then another rock for when he woke up from that rock. He could be stoned all day. Who knows? Anyhow, that's what really happened. The bicycle was stolen. Got a full 10 American dollars for it, enough to buy 2 rocks. So that's what legalization gets you, whether it's tacit or whether it's official. And these organizations that pretend to be helping people outside of the power of God are just a huge joke. It's just a huge joke. We're talking about throwing in Kid Rock lines to our preaching. Well, you know, Kid Rock talks about all his homies at the methadone clinic. Because he'd been in and out of the methadone clinic. He tried to get clean and gone in on pharmaceutical grade chemicals to try to wean off. And of course it was a repeated vicious cycle and a recidivistic process, just like he had been in and out of jail. Yeah. All my homies in the county in cell block 6. All the chicks with beepers. Praise the Lord. But there is a way out. And my assertion, one of them, in this message is going to be that drugs aren't really the problem. The real problem is the spirit of whoredoms. And I know it looks like it's the other way around, like, oh, the trick is turned to get the rock. But really that there is sexual violation and deviancy that comes generally first. And you know, I want to just point out a verse in Hosea that I've never heard preached. Nobody talks about it. And if anybody thinks I'm being hard on the ladies, which I have been a little bit hard on the ladies, I want you to hear this good, because this is where the Lord places the blame, and it's not where someone would suspect that I'm going to go. And everybody knows, even the people who don't like the book of Hosea and don't want to go there, don't want to be found in it, or study in it, or look in it, if they're a Bible scholar, they know what it's about. It's about a dirty whore that the Lord commands the prophet to go and marry, not get with, marry. He marries her. And there's really a beautiful message of hope. You want the good news first? All right, I'll give you the good news first. And then after I've done all my radio teases, I'm going to go to Hosea 4:14, the verse that nobody knows about, nobody talks about, nobody preaches. I'm going to preach it. But let's start here. 2:18. And in that day, all right, what's that day? Israel was about to go into captivity. She was about to experience the punishments that are written in this book. But there would be a day of redemption. And is that day that's spoken of in this verse the day of redemption, when Ezra and Nehemiah go to start rebuilding the temple, and when they're released from captivity, when Daniel found out by letters that the time of their captivity was 70 years and prayed efficaciously, prayed fervently that God would break their bands and cause them to be released from captivity and slavery and go back to their land that God promised to Abraham. Is that the day? Well, this prophecy was written first, and there was a partial fulfillment of that day. But I want you to think about what that day is, because it's the day that the lion lies down with the lamb. It is the day of the Lord. It's the restoration of all things, at least the lead up to it. So let's read 2:18 Hosea. And in that day will I make a covenant for them, for his people, with the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of heaven, and with the creeping things of the ground. You know, even the scorpions and stuff, right? They're going to work for you. And I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely. So, this is the day of victory. And then it continues in 21. 21 is very beautiful. And it shall come to pass in that day, I will hear, saith the Lord, I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth. And the earth shall hear the corn and the wine and the oil, and they shall hear Jezreel. And I will sow her unto me in the earth, and will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. And I will say to them which were not my people, thou art my people, and they shall say, thou art my God. Verse 19, this is very important. And I, this is the Lord, and I will betroth thee unto me forever. Yea, I will betroth thee unto me in righteousness and in judgment, in loving kindness and in mercies. I will even betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and thou shalt know the Lord. And then the Lord promises that he'll hear. So people's prayers aren't just going to sound out into the air. The Lord will hear, and he'll do it. And so this is the defeat of all wickedness in the earth. All right. This is the doctrine of the manifest sons. This is the doctrine of the overcomers. This is the doctrine of the man-child that rules all nations with a rod of iron, that sits with the Lord Jesus on his throne. Even, Jesus says, as I received of my Father. So this is what I want you to see. There's a doctrine that we spend a lot of focus on here in the Gospel Gunslingers, because we intend to actually win the things that we undertake, and the great battle of the ages. We intend to win it. To win it. We're in it to win it, like Heisman. Ow! That was another Kid Rock. I just came into a couple of tweets. Yes, he says, I can drink about 15 Heinekens. You know, I didn't have to tell everybody that I dropped an occasional Kid Rock line. Where does God put the blame? Everybody knows this book's about a dirty, dirty hose. 4:14 Hosea. I will not punish your daughters when they commit whoredom, nor your spouses, that is, wives, when they commit adultery. So the whole book is about dirty whores being punished, and then here the Lord says, I'm not going to punish the dirty whores, nor will I punish the women that are taken in adultery. Why? Okay, here's why. For themselves are separated with whores. So this is the men. The men themselves are separated with whores. And they sacrifice with harlots. They go out to the parties, right? They go out to these heathen pagan festivals. And they sacrifice with harlots. Therefore the people that doth not understand shall fall. So the Lord tells the nation of Israel how dirty tail shaking actually occurs. That really it was always daddy's fault. It really was always daddy's fault. You know, a famous pimp publicly said, I just got to thank all of the daddies that diddled their daughters, because without you, I wouldn't be in business. Yeah, that's what the pimp said. That to find the raw material to make hoes out of, he had to look for women and girls that had been abused from the time that they were very young. So here's God puts the blame. That's a key word, themselves. And this is just amazing, amazing. We find ourselves in a world and a nation as the United States. The village that I'm working in is 10 out of 10. Worse. Overcome with sleaziness and sluttiness and female tail shaking and the spirit of whoredoms. You know, I got a lot of kids that I teach martial arts to, and I haven't quite leveled with them yet, that all their fathers are criminals. Horrible criminals. And me teaching little boys and girls to defend themselves, who's the most likely person that they'll have to defend themselves from? Well, if that criminal should ever show up, pay a visit to his baby mama, yeah, that's the adversary. That's the typical, archetypical benchmark adversary. Their daddies are that. And that's how all this really got started. And that's how the spirit of whoredoms comes to reign over nations. So it starts with men being violators, and then those little bitty victims grow up to be habitual offenders and recidivists. And how are we going to fix all this? I guess that's a central question that I would ask. Well, it's why the title of the broadcast is Nymphomaniacs Anonymous. Because I tell you what, I, for one, am surrounded by nymphomaniacs. They set their heart on their iniquity. 4:8. So this is the story of Hosea that everybody knows. But I'd like to just kind of bring it home, how these spirits are working and how we defeat them. So let's see what we get. I don't know why that message just came up and then it disappeared, so I don't know what that takes. If I look away for a second, that can happen. Man, I can't believe we're 27 minutes in and I just got started telling what we're going to talk about. You know who else the Lord implicates? The priests. 5:1. Hear ye this, O priests, and hearken ye house of Israel, and give ear, O house of the king, for judgment is toward you, because ye have been a snare on Mizpah, and a net spread upon Tabor. Yeah, I think we all know where the vine of Sodom is. It comes out of the Catholic Church, that the Catholic Church is such kissing cousins with almost every church that it is. All the cults, all the sects, Islam, that Hinduism, every church over 50 people. And you know what? They've sowed their wild oats right in there too, where the same deviants are generally at the helm. Don't ever leave your kids alone with them. Let's go on. They will not frame their doings to turn unto their God, for the spirit of whoredoms is in the midst of them, and they have not known the Lord. Wait. The priests? The noble nations, the nation that the Lord chose for his name to dwell, and then split it into two nations because only Judah was halfway faithful? And they haven't known the Lord? Okay, some more good news. 6:3. If you don't know, this talks about the latter and the former rain. This is the final last days revival. And what's the key to the final last days revival? Somehow cleaning up some dirty, dirty hoes. Let's read 6:3. Then shall we know if we follow on to know the Lord, his going forth is prepared as the morning. So all that's very beautiful and poetic, maybe a little confusing, that the Lord is going to come like the breaking of the day. As the latter and former rain into the earth. You know, this whole chapter 5 and 6 and even 7 is about the hammer time that the Lord is just going to pound this nation. Pound it into oblivion. One more fun cultural reference. You know, there's a line in a song, and it's by the B-52s, which is one of the most homoerotic bands, right? All these guys that are little twinkle-toed. And a smoking hot pinup redhead, even though she was long in years, you know, they were famous. And their song, Love Shack, which is about a roadhouse that's known as a hookup place for orgiastic parties, The famous song goes, everybody's hugging, kissing, and loving. Wearing next to nothing because it's hot as an oven. Lo and behold, that language is right here in the book of Hosea. Can you believe it? Here we go. Here we go. 7:4. They're all adulterers, as an oven heated by the baker, who ceaseth from raising after he had kneaded the dough until it be leavened. Verse 6. For they have made ready their heart like an oven, whilst they lie in wait. Whilst they lie in wait, their baker sleepeth all the night. In the morning it burneth as a flaming fire. And then 7:7, Hosea. They are all hot as an oven. And then what is the effect on the society? They have devoured their judges. All their kings are fallen. There is none among men that calleth unto me. So this is also a blueprint for the evil and the wicked to come in and totally subvert a society. They don't just go right for the prosecutor's office or the sheriff's office. No. Little by little, they send in priests, they send in leaders, they send in abusers, they send in fathers that do not care for the young. And as they corrupt a generation and make little twinkle toes and little hookers out of them, then slowly that generation comes up. Not going to tell you who the police officers are in my town and what those kids were like, what I knew to be going on in their families when they were children. Guess what? They're the ones wearing the badge now. And we're talking hardcore 1980s deliberate Satanism, including SRA. Rape rituals, but they're wearing the badge. Well, it's right here in the Bible, so we shouldn't be super surprised about it. They're all hot as an oven and have devoured their judges. All their kings are fallen. There is none among them that calleth unto me. They return, so people even, here's your Narcotics Anonymous, right? Here's your look to a higher power, AA doctrine. 7:16, they return, but not to the Most High. See, they call on a higher power. They're going to say they're sorry to the people that they've hurt without really a circumcision of the heart and a death, burial, and resurrection experience, and without discipleship, and without the washing of water by the word of the mind, and without the crucifixion daily of the flesh and the taking up of their cross and following him. They return, but not to the Most High. They are like a deceitful bow. You know, a person puts a lot of faith in that bow when they put all their strength into it, that it's not going to shatter and send shards into their face. Their princes shall fall by the sword for the rage of their tongue. This shall be their derision in the land of Egypt. And I'm just going to shout a few things out from chapter 5, 6, 7, and 8, because this is about the pounding as the harlotries of this woman and the nation that she represents in the prophetic mime, then and now is going to just get absolutely pummeled by their enemies. It's written. They've dealt treacherously. They've begotten strange children, 5:7. Strange children. Now shall a month devour them with their portions. You stay in there, Logan. Blow the trumpet in Gibeah. Ephraim shall be desolate in the day of rebuke among the tribes of Israel. They've dealt treacherously against me. And here again, there's an implication of the men. But they, like men, have transgressed the covenant. So there's a lot in here about the treachery of women, but it tells the root of it as well. And that's 6:7, Hosea. 5, therefore have I hewed them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth. By the way, this is what the Lord does when things get really, 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 really bad. Thou shalt anoint, he said to Elisha, to be prophet in thy stead. He said, thou shalt anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, maybe, to be king over Israel, and thou shalt anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. Went in this order. Thou shalt anoint Hazael to be king over Syria, Jehu to be king over Israel, and thou shalt anoint Elisha to be prophet in thy stead. And so this is what happens, is God's first choice is to, well, when it falls back to the triary, it's the prophets that do the heavy lifting and the destroying. Thy judgments are as the light that goeth forth. The famous verse, I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. So God really wanted them to just come and receive of his mercy. When God taught his law to Israel, he didn't really want them to get bogged down in the tedium of it. He wanted them to draw near to him so that he could be merciful to them. It's the mystery of what Jesus said. You know, everybody wanted to come to Jesus with this legal mentality. They wanted to argue. The Bible refers to them as lawyers. Wearing next to nothing because it's hot as an oven. 6:9, and as troops of robbers wait for a man, so the company of priests murder in the way by consent, for they commit lewdness. Oh, the priests themselves are lewd? And it tells that the company of priests, that they're actually murderers. Good boy, stay. So I'm going to skip a lot of the prophetic chapters. You go in and take a look at them, and I'm sure the Lord will speak to you a little bit. You know, here's an interesting one in chapter 10, so I'll just hit that. Jacob shall break his clods. So this is where we were just yesterday. And he tells, and Ephraim is as an heifer that is taught, and loveth to tread out the corn. So she liked to live the high life. But then he says, oh, but now you're going to ride. Now you're going to plow. You're going to do the work that is expected of your type. And then, here's a beautiful thing. Jacob shall break his clods. Sow to yourselves in righteousness, reap in mercy, break up your fallow ground. For it is time to seek the Lord till he come and reign in righteousness upon you. And you know the same language is in Jeremiah 4:3. And we were just there last time around. So take a look at that. You've plowed wickedness, you've reaped iniquity, you've eaten the fruit of lies. And then he says, therefore shall a tumult arise. So there's going to be some spoiling. This is just a beautiful verse, and because it comes up in the New Testament. 11:1, when Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. Matthew 2:15, out of Egypt I called my son. So this is going to be in 12:9, our third witness that the book of Hosea is in fact the key to the last days revival, to the early and the latter rain, and to the time that the Lord will turn the battle at the gate. Here we go. Hosea 12:9. And I that am the Lord thy God from the land of Egypt will yet make thee to dwell in tabernacles, as in the days of the solemn feast. So I've taught a lot on the Feast of Tabernacles. It's pretty key to what we look over, and what we are hoping for is the final latter days outpouring that is typified by the Feast of Tabernacles. And here the Lord tells, right here in Hosea, that through this archetype and the acting out of it and the fulfillment of it, the Lord will yet make us to dwell in tabernacles, where he will be a cloud over us, where we will shake loose from all of the limitations of this earth. And then a couple more things in 12:13. And by a prophet the Lord brought Israel out of Egypt, and by a prophet was he preserved. It just tells us more that this book is the key to unlocking the end times. And I love this 12:12. and Jacob fled into the country of Syria, and Israel served for a wife, and for a wife he kept sheep. You know, the Lord's soldier of God desired a bride. He just took a look. I didn't have to say anything. But Logan wanted to come out from his little spot where he has eyes. He knows he's not supposed to come out of there, even if there's another dog he'd like to visit with. I will heal their backsliding. Can God do it? I will love them freely, for mine anger is turned away from him. You know, the United States, and really Mexico also, but for different ways and in different reasons, but the United States was built by people that fled from the old world. It was built by the victims. It was built by young people who were corrupted by an overbearing power class, a priesthood class. They were, you know, in the old world, the pilgrims and the immigrants that came were sharecroppers and laborers and slaves, and their greatest dream was something that we see as very small. We've superseded it by such an amazing degree. Was to own their own land, their own little piece of land, to be landowners. Because where they come from, the landowners are lords. And the people that don't own land are subservient. And if they could just own their own land and work their own land, what an honor it would be to sit under their own vine and their own fig tree. A recurring promise of the Bible, that when the Lord creates his utopias, this is what he will create. And he says every man will drink from his own cistern, which is just a little bit of a euphemism, but it means that each man will have his own wife. You know, you get in the cistern in the spring, and a person having his own well. In Ecclesiastes and the Song of Solomon it's very clear that it talks about a man having his own wife, his own mate. And then in the physical, that's typified by a man dwelling under the shade of his own vine and his own fig tree, and him being the husbandman, and him, you know, farming and cultivating and clearing out all the thorns and the predators so that all those things can grow and be nice. And he's going to take naps, right? He's going to have his own vineyard, make his own wine from his own vineyard, and he's going to drink that wine and take little naps under his own vine and his own fig tree. And this is the wonderful world tomorrow. Well, this is really the wonderful world of the millennial reign. This is what the Lord Jesus will establish when he's king and reigns in Jerusalem. But just before that is the day of the Lord. A 3.5 year period, Clay Sonmore taught, where the covenant is established, where the Lord's people actually get the power from on high that they can actually win, and where God heals our backsliding. And maybe we would be wrong to hope for that if it hadn't happened before. But it happened in Israel, it happened in our own nation. You know, we are oppressed peoples that just wanted to be free and have our own little piece of land and work it. And this is where we get Puritanism, and this is where we get the pioneer faith of the dressing up and going to the church house once a week, and the Protestant work ethic, and people working their own little piece of land very hard. You know, a lot of pioneers, they had to meet certain goals over a period of years in order for that land to be deeded to them. They were out sod busting. They were working land grants, and they had to achieve certain things or they wouldn't get it. You know, the man that Laura Ingalls Wilder married, so this is Wilder, he had a piece of farmland, and he had another piece of land that he had to cultivate so many trees and keep the trees alive for so long. And he'd take his wagon out and water those trees because they were trying to get the prairie to bring forth some trees. And he failed. And he lost his land grant because too many of his trees died. And they had wild Indians and predators and weird weather that they really had to encounter by prophecy, confront by prophecy. But that is one of the few events where they were not successful. They failed, and he did not get his own land. So this is where we come from. The reason that we have this pioneer faith of absolute no opportunity for there to be incest, no opportunity for there to be misbehavior, no opportunity for sex before marriage, for promiscuousness, because our forefathers knew all about that from the old world, and many of them were touched by that, and that's why they were so thankful to God to be in a new land where they could live a different way and just try to be obedient to what this book did. So when you read about people like Ma and Pa Ingalls, Laura's parents, and what mighty pillars of faith they were, and how they directed their daily life with such discipline and thanksgiving to God and joyfulness in really a very austere environment. Suffering, really, is more appropriate. They suffered a very great deal and were in mortal perils almost constantly. For them, their rejoicing was when they got out of mortal peril for a little while, when they had enough of this or that stored up, that they weren't, looking at a looming emergency and an impending doom. Then they were thankful for that. Oh, Lord. And this is what the original Thanksgiving was about, is in 1 year, the Lord gave the pilgrims, those that survived, he gave them an opportunity to escape. So, young fellers, if you want to marry today, boy, you got an uphill battle ahead of you, because everybody is the victims of this. Somebody asked me, and this was years ago, they said, Sam, how prolific is incest? They wanted to know. And I said, what's that family on TV? 18 kids and counting? And they said, it's the Duggars. And I said, you will find it there. I didn't want it to be true. People need to not inquire the word of the Lord if they don't want both barrels. Well, it happened. It was found there. That shows up there. There are, criminal cases, court proceedings over this. And while, the wicked are all laughing too, because here's this family that really tried to stay away from the corruption of society. But the devil worked double hard to get in and break into that chicken coop where he wasn't allowed. But I that's what happened when somebody asked me, and I didn't have that all prepared. It's just the word of the Lord, and it's not always a joyous occasion when the word of the Lord comes to pass. You see the punishment, and the raging upon our nation is about to happen. It's about to happen. We're very, very close to breakdown and war internally and externally, inside and outside. It's getting ready to happen. But there's some shrews that are going to get tamed. And you know what? For a dirty hoe that knows what they're up to and knows that they've been guilty of everything that they're guilty of everything that Literati said, when they know that, their greatest dream should be for somebody to have, their greatest dream should be for somebody to have enough skin in the game to bet their life on their success when they're the one that's a basket case. Let's not forget that. Anyhow, you want to know how we're going to get to Tabernacles? This is it. Some bold men are going to take a totally unwinnable, a battle with unwinnable odds, and take it to the finish line. And you'll see us enter into Tabernacles. Thanks for coming along. Visit me on GospelGunslingers.com and send me $1. I'll make it a peso and put it to good use. God bless. See you next time. 349.
A ver.